Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm back for another hour of Black USA crypto news. Oh, how could I possibly forget? Congratulations to the new NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks out there. Um, wow, so great to see Milwaukee get a win, uh, get a big win. So now I'm guessing there will be a new blockchain partnership with the Bucks coming very soon. We're seeing a lot of those with the NBA teams, and there's going to be one for the Bucks right around the corner. I'm saying it now because it's going to happen. One of the other reasons why I have another hour this week is because I have another guest I'd like to introduce to you guys here. His name is Walter. Hey, Walter, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great. How are you doing?
All right. I'm going to try to see how I can get you in here.
I mean, move over. I can move over a little bit if you want. Oh, there we go.
That's probably a better way to accommodate you. Make sure you're comfortable and everything, man. So how's your week been?
It's been amazing. It's coming to a close this week. I was working on a couple of projects, but yeah, hoping to have a really relaxing weekend. Maybe go get some ice cream. That's my goal this weekend.
That's not a bad idea at all. So, Walter Wallace, if you could introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about what you do, that'd be great.
Sure. So my name is Walter Wallace. My background mainly is in communications, but for the sake of the conversation, I am working on a project called the Black DAO. I have a YouTube channel that I recently started. It's mainly surrounding the idea around a kind of Black collectivism and just like kind of crowdsourcing and finding a way in which we could actually crowdsource funding that is trustless. I think that that's something that has been an issue with kind of crowdsourcing and kind of this idea of where's the money going, that kind of whole thing. So that's kind of where I've been exploring. I've only been in the kind of crypto space for about 3 years now, but it's one of those things is that once you go down that rabbit hole, you have all these aha moments along the way, and eventually you kind of fall in love with it. So that's kind of where I am right now. I'm just really a sponge to learning and knowing and just like absorbing all that I can within this space. And come on, just like being with like-minded folks like yourself who are extremely knowledgeable and have stuff to share. Those are people that I want to be around. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I only know so much about this, but we were just talking in our last hour about DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. Now, maybe you could give your definition of what a DAO is and why they're valuable to our community.
Sure. So I guess for me, the big definition for me is like having a collective kind of bottom up approach to decision making, in which everyone kind of feels like they have a role in how decisions are being made, and there's not this kind of top down approach that we kind of have traditionally seen with organizations. So for me, I guess the big benefit for a DAO would be that not only is it a bottom up approach in which everybody kind of has this opportunity to have their voices heard, and you can create something that is that everybody can be a part of. But it's also the idea that if it's on something like a distributed ledger or some type of blockchain, that you can create a system to where you don't necessarily need to trust the person who has the funds, but you can actually document everything in a transparent way in which everyone can kind of see to make sure that everything is being done on the up and up. So no longer do you have to have these kind of, charismatic characters who go out and raise funds or, try to tell people to do things. But and then in turn, at the very end, I think in our community, we've seen it, so many times where we try to raise something, we get behind an individual or an organization, but after everything's said and done, we don't have that end product that we were promised, or we don't necessarily know where all the money's gone. And so that's kind of my big thing with the DAO, is that I think this is an opportunity, and like this is extremely new. It's extremely something that it has a lot of potential. But I think that it has the potential to really transform the way kind of economics in our communities are done. And it has a way to kind of transcend how we actually spend money and crowdsource. So that's kind of my whole thoughts on it. And I mean, I can talk about specifically this project if you want, but that's kind of where I am with it. I think that the big takeaway for me is a bottom up approach and the trustless systems of it.
Yeah, I absolutely would like you to speak about your project for sure. We've had a chance to speak about it previously, but yeah, why don't you talk about your project in particular? I think that this is something that is right on time.
All right, sure. So the idea behind the Blacked Out, like I talked about a little bit earlier, is kind of to create a system where folks who are who are African American can kind of crowdsource their resources in order to fund different projects. So the idea is that we would all kind of be behind some type of governance system. And this system that I created, and given this is very preliminary, I just have my first draft of my white paper out. And I'm kind of just getting advice on this right now about what's the benefits, the pros and cons, what I should change. But pretty much the idea is that there's a governance token. I call it the Frederick, named after one of the great leaders of the African-American leaders, Frederick Douglass. And the Frederick is designed to govern kind of the Black DAO. And what does that look like? Well, if you're in the Black DAO, we have something where any member can actually create something called an endowment. By creating an endowment, pretty much it's just an idea. It's an idea like, let's say, for example, I want to build a community center in Oakland, California. I can put that up for an endowment, and then different members of the community who have Fredericks can vote on if they want to fund this project. If it reaches that first threshold where the majority of the community actually says, yes, this is a great project, we want to help fund this, we want to support this project, then it would move forward to the next phase, which is the actual funding phase. And so in the funding phase, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we don't have something as volatile as a token or some type of crypto like the Frederick, but we want to have something that's more stable. So for that, we would use something like a DAI or a USDC coin, which is more pegged to a dollar or some type of collateral, which you can kind of, it won't always be a dollar, but it'll be really close to a dollar. So something that's more stable. And so then the community can actually go ahead and fund the said project. So let's say, for example, we have the project that moves to the next phase of the endowment, which is the funding phase. Now everybody can actually start putting in the resources to fund this project. Now, because we're doing it on the blockchain, everything is documented. So you don't have to worry about, you don't have to trust me as a member of the Black DAO because everything's documented. If I was to go off and run with the money, it would show, hey, this money went to this wallet. You can know who it is. My name's on the project. My face is on the project. You know who I am, right? So you don't have to worry about those kind of trust things. Everything's documented. And ultimately, if the idea is that if the endowment does not hit the goal, then the funds are actually distributed back to the original donors. So that way there is no loss of funds or anything's kind of missing in that way. Now, however, if the project does reach that goal, and let's say the community center in Oakland, the goal was to raise $5 million, right? Let's say we hit that goal of $5 million. Well, what we have is we have a foundation which would actually go out and find different individuals who could actually help build that project out. So people like electricians and builders and project managers and different things like that. And the idea is that we would have a database of African-American individuals who would be able to help build these things out. So not only will we be building this community center along the way, but we'd also be empowering our own community and then spreading our dollars further and further along the way. Now, there's a lot of intricate details that we can kind of go into later on, but that's kind of the gist of it. And like I said before, the biggest part about this is all of this is actually documented on the blockchain. So you don't have to worry about anybody running off with funds or knowing or having to worry about any type of mismanagement along the way.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I touched on in our last hour about DAOs doing the decision making for us without the human element, right? Or things like greed coming into the picture, because, hey, people have great ideas. And if you get, let's just say $100 million to get it funded, right? You might change your mind about fully funding this project or thinking that you need a certain amount of money to fund a project, right? So I don't know. I that's where I think DAOs are important, and it really helps to balance how human resources should be properly allocated for a particular project. Since we're talking about DAOs, I think I presume that you may have seen the news this week about MakerDAO becoming fully decentralized. Did you get a chance to come across that story?
I saw the headline, but I was not. I was still kind of interested in seeing what that. And maybe you can actually help me with this. Is that what does that mean as far as the future of MakerDAO? Does that mean that now the community would take control over the decision making, and there would no longer be like kind of a central authority? Or would they like kind of move where the organization is located? How would that all, I don't know how that all works exactly.
Well, I didn't look into all the intricacies and details, but what I do know is the Maker Foundation will be pulling away from the actual decision making, and the DAO will actually take over. So that's a pretty exciting milestone for that project. And I think we've kind of had a conversation. I mean, I think MakerDAO is a great project. They're making tremendous progress. There's certain aspects of MakerDAO that I like, and there's some things that I don't like, and that's more from the perspective of being in the community. So I'm not speaking negatively of MakerDAO in any way, shape, or form. I actually think this is very positive. I'm not telling anybody to invest, but there's a lot to it. It's just MakerDAO isn't necessarily my style of governance and of I guess collateralization to a certain extent. But don't get me wrong. Of course, without MakerDAO, we wouldn't have so many great propositions and other projects that really took what they put in place and created new and different things. But I did want to run that past you. And, that also being said, what are some of or at least maybe are some aspects of MakerDAO in the Black DAO that you think were worth at least kind of, relatively emulating? And obviously when it comes to our community, there has to be some degree of massaging and adjustment. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I was going to say that 100%. I think that when I first started out with just this idea and just learning like, hey, what is a DAO? How does it work? I was on the Maker forums and I was kind of reading and asking questions. So I would say that a lot of influence with this idea as far as like the structure and the idea of how a DAO should be formed, I actually took a lot of influence from MakerDAO. I would say that's the number one way that I was influenced. And actually, what I was thinking about doing is I was trying to say, okay, one of the things I wanted to do is I didn't want to create a token like the Frederick necessarily, where it was volatile like a cryptocurrency. I wanted to make something that was more stable. And so what I was trying to do is see how can I come up with a DAI, something similar to a DAI, but with a different name. And the reason why I was talking to people in the forums and they were like, well, why don't you just use DAI instead of using a name? And the biggest thing that I kind of was trying to tell them is that one of the biggest challenges that I'm going to have with the implementation of the Black DAO is going to be the education component and getting people from my community to get on board with cryptocurrency. Because I mean, as soon as you say the word DAO, you say the word DAI, everybody's going to glaze over, right? So how can we create a system, right? Maybe even gamify it. I think that there's a lot of gamification in Ethereum. How can we gamify this system in a way that people can resonate and people can understand? And how can we create an ecosystem around teaching that is going to resonate with the community? To your point, I wanted to add one more thing to your point about the MakerDAO or the DAO thing that, because I do love the project personally, but the one thing that I have not had trouble with, but just been kind of on the fence about with understanding is around the vault system. I know that you have to over collateralize, which I really love that idea. But one of the things that that was always kind of concerned me is when because crypto markets are so volatile, right? And there is a risk of, markets in one day can go down 50%, 60%, 70%, when there's these kind of larger crashes. So one of the things that happened in 2017, which was my big learning experience, and I mean, at the time I was kind of like, I didn't understand the idea of like, taking profits on the way up or anything like that. I was kind of like, I wanted to just dollar cost average and I'm leaving the money in. I don't really care if it goes down. Right. And so when that happened in 2017, when everything kind of collapsed, I was not in the market. I wasn't trying to pull money out or anything like that. But as I kind of did more of like a deep dive into kind of what happened during that time, one of the things that I noticed with the centralized exchanges and with the networks is that they were extremely congested. So when everybody was trying to pull out at the same time at the end, what ended up happening is that people's transactions weren't confirmed, websites were down, centralized exchanges were down. And so my question is that if that was to happen with the MakerDAO, right? And let's say I was collateralized at 100 and 150%, but it drops a ton and I can't get my transaction confirmed to add more funds, would I be at risk of being liquidated in that case, which will be demoralizing and devastating? And that's the kind of question where I didn't really have an answer to, but maybe you can help me answer that. Would that happen? Would I get liquidated in that case?
That's a good question. It all comes down to the rules of the DAO, and that's most likely you probably would. And I know that hurts, but here's the thing: what I do like about MakerDAO is the over collateralization, just like you said. So if you do get liquidated, you get liquidated because you were really doing. You were really being risky with your loan, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you had a healthy loan to value ratio, you're not going to get liquidated. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it all depends. And people have different strategies on how they use, these crypto loans. And, obviously that in and of itself is part of the reason why I wrote my book, right? I mean, to move away from the traditional system that's based on credit scores, right? And it's so arbitrary. And even still, removing the credit score, you're still walking into a bank where a loan officer may have some degree of bias, right? So having something, once again, that's decentralized, where it's pseudo-anonymous, once again, where you might not necessarily know who the user is, who you're either extending a loan to, or what in a given peer-to-peer loan fashion. These are things that could be extremely helpful to our community. So, I really applaud your vision with the Black DAO. It's something that we need. And, honestly, in my opinion, I mean, we need a dozen other projects, not like the Black DAO, but, have different offerings, and the different propositions. Just like I said, I like MakerDAO as a project, but it's not my style of DeFi that I necessarily get behind, right? But once again, I think we're in an age right now where the future of money is digital, and there is a gap right now where the technology is ahead of most corporate systems. It's well ahead of regulation, and we need to take this time to fill the gap with our own ideas and our own ingenuity as much as possible, so that we don't get, because I think banks right now are figuring out what they're going to do with blockchain and crypto. And what they want to do is keep their current customer base as well as find new customers and create new offerings with this, right? So once again, they're not losing out. And that's why, 3 years ago, you couldn't go into a bank and say, hey, I want to get a bank account, not even a loan. I just want to get a bank account and I have a crypto-based business. They would basically say, hey, get out of here, right? Because Bitcoin and crypto, it's a threat. They didn't know what to do then. They're starting to formulate what they're going to do now. And if we don't get in front of this somehow, some way, people will just, get lazy. I mean, I'm not saying our people, but I'm just saying people in general will get lazy. When I talk to a lot of people in our community about Bitcoin, they're like, well, why wouldn't I just use Apple Pay or PayPal? And it's digital money, right? Why not use something that's already established, that has a slick user interface and it's easy? I can get it at the App Store, connect it to my bank, and I'm good to go. The problem is where do you have something for yourself? And I think another thing that's kind of happening right now is there's these two schools of thought, which are totally understandable, right? You have the people who want to get crypto and they want to get rich, right? Nothing wrong with this, right? But beyond that, we're going to get to a point, where there's going to be a lot of adoption in our community, but then we don't have anything for ourselves. That's where guys like you come in, where you're building, right? And you have the vision to kind of get something in place. So, once again, I take my hat off to you. I applaud you for this and just bringing this to the forefront. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, especially is so that we can get a little bit more exposure to these concepts and why they're important to our community. And so maybe to take a step back, why is the Black DAO important for us?
That's a great question. And taking a step back, I want to go to kind of a little bit about the structures that kind of we grew up in. Like for me, at least, I've only known, I was, trained through United States school system, right? So you don't learn about doing taxes. You don't know anything about opening a bank account. You have no financial literacy when you graduate at 18 years old. You get a credit card, you have these high interest loans, and you just assume these are the way that things are, right? So for me, when I first got involved in cryptocurrency, and I saw, the first thing that really got me gravitating in the last couple of years, not gravitating immediately, but like one of the things that really jump started kind of like my aha moments was when I started seeing how the staking system worked in cryptocurrency and how you can get 2%, 4% yields on just sitting your USDC or a stable coin in a cryptocurrency vault or on an exchange or whatever. And I started thinking, so hold on a second. If my bank account goes below $1,000, I have to pay $10 a month to the bank just to hold my own money, right? If I do have a savings account with the bank, they give me 0.0001% interest. And here I am, I have the opportunity to gain 2, 3, 4% interest with a custodial wallet that I actually own and I control. And I know that might be hard for people to get their minds around, but for me, the biggest component right now is how do I show African Americans or Black people that this is what is in it for you? That's the big thing that I need to figure out how to do. How do I not say, hey, this is the Black DAO, this is how we're going to help everyone else, and this is how we're going to build our community? That's the biggest part about this for me. Yes, that's the kind of large picture and the holistic picture, the holistic view. But I want to really angle this main message around the individual. How is this going to benefit me? Because ultimately, as human beings, people have a self-interest, right? That it's just inherent with a lot of people. So that's kind of where the educational component is. And that's why in some of the courses that I kind of created over the course of the last, this last summer and everything was around the introduction to cryptocurrency. So how to open up your first account and how to use your public key versus your private key, and how to transfer funds, and also staking. And this is how you stake. And then trying to explain things like, hey, let's say, for example, with people who have institutional wealth, right? Let's just say somebody's extremely wealthy and they have, $10 million or 20 million. Let's say take $10 million to keep it round. So if you have $10 million in Cosmos token right now, let's say, for example, right? If you have $10 million right now, they will give you 8% APY, right? So 8% APY on $10 million is what? 800,000. Is that $800,000? Yes. $800,000 per year. So if you had $10 million sitting around and you just sat it in an account, now given it is a somewhat of a risk, you're sitting in an account, it's got to be audited and stuff, but this is just kind of an argument that I'm making right here. If you were sitting in an account, $10 million, and you're earning an 8% yield, you have $800,000 that you have free and clear every single year that you can then use to kind of finance your entire life. And this is kind of the bigger picture with how I want people to kind of understand. Yes, I don't have 10 million. A lot of people don't have 10 million, but what if you have 10,000? Well, that could be enough for, a small payment or a payment for your kids, sports for the year, something like that. But this is kind of how I want people to start thinking about how you're earning this money for free. How can you earn interest or make your money work for you rather than just using the traditional systems, because we already kind of know how they use. And so ultimately the Black DAO, yes, it is around kind of crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, but there's also going to be a way of educating the community. So one of the big things about this is that if the Black DAO is successful, the only way that it will be successful is if we successfully educate Black people around cryptocurrency. And so that's one of the biggest things, is that if this project is successful, even if, let's say, for example, we only do small projects, but we have, let's say, 100,000 people who are participating in the Black DAO. None of the projects, let's say we don't build a hospital for 50 million, but we build a community center for 2 million. If we have 100,000 people who are educated in cryptocurrency, even though we didn't necessarily get the big things done, I consider that extremely successful, because we're now getting people who are exposed to this space. And ultimately, I believe that once you get that exposure and you start to get those aha moments, you're going to go deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole. Now, one of the things I want to make sure that I always say is that I try not to offer any financial advice. I just want to do the education side. And I really, really, really always tell people, don't be greedy, right? Don't invest what you can't afford to lose. If I lose every single thing in crypto, if everything goes to zero right now, I am 100% okay with that, because I knew what the risk was, and I'm not going to over leverage myself to make my lifestyle any different than it already is. So ultimately, that's kind of the goal of it, is that we just want to educate the community. And I think this project has a multifaceted approach to that.
I mean, I completely agree with a lot of what you just said. I mean, I try to have these sort of informal conversations and bring up topical news stories so that I can expose our community to these things. I try not to just talk about Bitcoin all the time, but also, this show's for informational purposes only. I definitely don't want to go too far off into speaking about specific projects as though I'm endorsing them. So
yes, let me say this.
It's
sorry, I want to say something, since I did mention Cosmos. That's not an endorsement, and no, I actually don't own any Cosmos. So just because I mentioned that product does not mean that I endorse it or own it at all. None of that was financial advice.
Right. Yeah, and I thought it was a good example of how there are certain projects out there where if you stake your assets with them, you do get a certain percentage. So I just saw it as a mere example. I didn't see it as an endorsement.
Okay.
Thank you for taking the time out to do that, because, I don't want people to come after you because they put $10 million in Cosmos and it went down to $2, right? So, but once again, this is why I try to have these sort of conversations to inform people, to expose them, because that's a major thing in our community, is sometimes people don't get exposed to these concepts in these conversations. And, so it is still very early. And it is possible for somebody to start today or tomorrow and get involved in cryptocurrency. Once again, if they do it in a very judicious, circumspect manner with their funds, they have a possibility of setting themselves up pretty well. Obviously without overextending their financial means. So that's not advice. Once again, that's just information. We're still, once again, very early in all this. And I, for years myself, have pushed for the educational piece. I mean, we're talking about finance and technology. So those are two ways that we can engage our community in the jobs of the future, not just the money of the future, but the jobs of the future, right? My whole thing is, even if you don't want to invest in blockchain or crypto right now, find out how blockchain is going to affect the job that you currently have. Learn as much about it as you can. Then you can become the expert in your company or go to another company and be their expert on how blockchain interfaces and intersects with the work that you do. A pretty good example of that on a Pashto is Olayinka. She did that with cybersecurity and blockchain, and she moved out of the traditional financial sector into those two sectors. And I don't necessarily know if she's all that technically inclined. Her background is in finance, and she interfaces on the policy level, not on the technical level. So this is very, very real for being a way to change people's lives. And that's the sort of stuff that I push in my book. So not to digress too far, but I want to get back to the Black DAO and maybe some of the specific proposals within the Black DAO that you think are worth mentioning.
Sure. So, this is, like I said, we're still like in the phase of just like kind of we have the white paper draft, and we're still trying to like build up to like that final white paper and potential implementation. But ideally, there's definitely next steps that I kind of see. So ultimately, what I believe that the actual like functioning society or a community really needs are a couple of key components. One thing is, I think that you have to have media that you kind of control or that you have some type of interest in. The other is that you have to be able to educate your community. And what that looks like is, from the younger age up until I would say like, at least 18. And the third thing I would say is that you probably need is going to be some type of healthcare and medical facility. So like a hospital. So those are like the three main functions that I would see as being the most important kind of things to be funded. One of the things that and this is kind of going to one of the things that kind of prompted this bigger idea is there's a gentleman, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, is Dr. Umar Johnson. He had a really grand idea about 5 years ago of opening like a Pan-African school in somewhere in the United States. And, he spent a number of years raising the money for the school. And, he's a great speaker. And I believe that I truly do believe that he was intended on building the school. But the thing is that he is, he's an educator and he's kind of a public speaker. He's not a project manager. So even though he was well versed and he could speak very well, he speaks very eloquently about the school, and he has these different things about, military science he's going to be teaching, and teaching people how to grow their own food, and teaching people their history. They leave school with a trade so they can always make money. They don't have to rely on anyone to potentially make money. All these different great components. But as far as the implementation and the project management side, I think that he was in way over his head. So when he went through that process and he had the large sum of money, there needed to be repairs done, and there needed to be plumbing, and they needed electrical and all these different things. So once the funding was done, he needed even more funding. And so when you do that with people who've already raised, upwards of, $800,000, $1 million, people are going to become suspect to what's going on. Hey, where's the money? Why isn't it managed better? you said it was going to be this much money. Now the number's changing. People kind of get iffy, especially in our community, because I feel like we've been wronged so many times and we're extremely trusting. And we've been kind of burned a lot through history. And so with that being said, I feel like this is a perfect example of something that would have been better suited, because all the funding could have been documented along the way, right? Even before buying anything, even before breaking ground, you could actually go through and you can find out how much everything is going to take all along the way, so you can have that process documented. So with the example of, like, let's say, for example, a hospital, one of the actual thoughts that I had around that, and this is more like way further along, is I'm still trying to figure out how it would work with who owns the property. So let's say, for example, we were to fund a hospital. We go through the hospital phase of the endowment phase. The endowment is actually completely funded through the community. And we have a project manager. We have the Black Dow Foundation, which is going to assign different businesses to actually develop the project. So from the construction workers to the welders to the plumbing folks, hiring all these people along the way to develop this project. Who owns the building afterwards? Is it then passed along to a nonprofit to manage, or does the Dow own it? I'm personally thinking that the Dow would actually kind of manage the physical building, and how that all works. Those are the kind of the details that I'm trying to work out right now. But one of the really cool things that I was thinking about actually doing for the project, in order to give people a sense of ownership once the project has been developed, is what about this idea of, if you have, let's say, for example, I donate 1% of the funds related to that hospital, I would then get a 1% ownership in the digital form that is represented for that project. So now I have a digital ownership of that building that I personally own, that I can actually take anywhere with me, and I can do whatever I want with that, which can be really cool. I have some ideas around how that could be play a role in that, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about it, is that how can we kind of get people to feel like they're a part of it? Another way I was thinking about is, like, the traditional way where if you donate a certain amount of money to the project, we'll have a chair out front with your name, supported by this person. We'll have maybe some bricks on there that kind of show the person's name who donated, little things like that, to kind of show that they actually helped out and they supported the project in a certain way. So those are kind of the different things that I'm kind of thinking about as far as, like, how this whole thing would work. The specifics about how the things are going to get built and who's going to build it. I have some ideas around using different directories, but that's even another question, is that we actually, as a community, don't have a professional directory. We don't have a centralized directory. It's very dispersed. So that's actually even a larger, not a larger problem, but it's something that could potentially be extremely beneficial, where if we had a professional database with all Black folks, where that could be easily assembled, or you can find somebody to do the work right away. I think that it's a easy, seamless way which we can actually spread business, and we can circulate the dollar a lot easier versus Googling somebody and just like trying to find somebody because you just don't have the time to really go out and look for, hey, is this person Black? Is this person not? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the other very powerful thing in all this is you're able to crowdfund a project, and you're doing it in a decentralized manner. Once again, you're taking like Kickstarter or one of those crowdfunding platforms who take a percentage. At the end of the day, they take a percentage, and that obviously takes away from the fund. So to do it in a decentralized manner where it's just the project, just the people who are contributing to the project, they're able to actually have more money when it's all said and done at the end of the day to execute that project. So that's what I think is important about these sort of systems and why we should rely on these systems. You brought up an excellent example of why blockchain is needed in our community, why trust is important, and why trustless systems are also important too. I mean, there has to be some degree of trust, but there needs to be the lack of trust, once again, when it comes to accountability in the handling of money, right? in the movement of money, right? Once again, there can't be somebody in the middle who has their hand out and can just put money in their pocket. So once again, that's why we need to create a system that is decentralized, that operates in parallel and in tandem with the traditional system. So when you need to rely on one, it's there, but at least we have an alternative of something else that is going to be equitable and sustainable, and that puts our best interests forward, which is something we just do not have now. And anyone who thinks we do needs to read my book. So.
I want to add on to that what you just said around, and I want to maybe get your take on this, because one of the things that around the trust and the trustlessness of everything, you know, you see the government always say like, hey, you can't have these non-custodial wallets because people are going to do nefarious things and terrorism and XYZ. Now, one of the biggest issues that I have with the kind of the KYC, and I want to get your take on this, is my biggest issue with the KYC is not because I'm not a criminal. You know, I don't like that they presume that, you know, the average person's a criminal. We're going to do something that's nefarious. But on top of that is that by me giving my information to a government or to any type of entity, a private business, let's say I don't want to use a custodial business, not if they get hacked, but when they get hacked, they now have all of my information. Not only do they have where I live, possibly my social security number, my phone number, you know, all of my personal information from my name to my sex, all these different things. But they also know that I own cryptocurrency, and I can't take any type of recourse to, you know, sue or anything once that information gets leaked. And guess what? Once it's on the dark web, it's there forever, right? So how I guess I want to get your take on, like, you know, this kind of custodial versus non-custodial kind of, if you like the kind of the trust aspect of not having to give your information or giving it up. Because I personally, that's the biggest issue that I have, is that when you have to give that up, it's like, it's so risky with all of your stuff. So I want to know kind of where you stand on that.
You know, that is a very good question. And I think there's really only one way for me to answer it. And I think what you have to do is abide by all the laws of the United States of America. And in the absence of those laws, you need to do something that would be as close to what's legal as possible. But what you're really speaking to is a major problem where really the risk has been shifted to you, right? So a company is going to say, hey, we need to impose AML KYC so that we're not suspected of facilitating money laundering, right? Or harboring criminals in our system. So they take the law, they impose it on you, right? And then once again, there are so many hackers out there that are exploiting not just regular people, but now companies at a higher level, in a higher frequency, at a higher pace than they ever have. So, you know, that risk, you know, so the companies will say, hey, I have cybersecurity insurance, and, you know, we do put forward the best practices to protect our clients. But ultimately, if that company is hacked, you're the one who's left without cyber and security insurance, without, you know, the reassurance that your information will ever end up on the dark web. You know, maybe something else that I can say in this regard is having a mix of custodial and non-custodial options out there. Why do I say that? It's really to mitigate your own personal risk and not putting all your eggs in one basket. Just like you wouldn't put all of your funds into a specific asset or asset class because of the risk in the market, you may not want to have all your funds centralized in one place. So if it does get taken down, you know, you don't lose everything all in one fell swoop. or you're not exposed to everything in all one fell swoop. That's the best answer that I can give you. Once again, we as people, law-abiding citizens, when we're availed of the laws, we need to follow them. That's my advice, because I don't want anybody to take what I'm saying and as legal advice and misconstruing what I'm saying or anything like that. So I'm trying to be responsible in my response to you. But I do think it's all about mitigating risk at that point. Being able to abide by the laws of the laws of the land, but also mitigating your risk in certain situations. So, that's the best way that I could approach that answer to you. But you are absolutely right. Everything that we interface with, certainly every company that we interface with, we are at risk of having our information and our data compromised. The other big problem is, a lot of the times we're handing over this information, when we use an app on our smartphone, or, even with MetaMask, right? MetaMask is a Chrome extension. Mm-hmm. And we already know how much data is being collected by Google from Chrome. If you look at the MetaMask terms of service, yes, you're basically giving all that information, to certainly to MetaMask, but certainly to Google too. So, I know there's other Web3 wallet providers out there, and I'm not saying this to be negative in any way about MetaMask, because there are ways that you can tweak and adjust the ways that you use MetaMask and how it interacts with Chrome so that less of your information is exposed. And that all comes down to you as a user being informed on how to use it properly. But, once again, there's so much information that we already allow other agencies and entities to have, just so that we can, do things with a little bit more ease, or, once again, I think that a major human element is laziness, right? We get lazy. Okay, hey, I don't want to type in my password anymore, or just whatever, right? So these are things, once again, and I know it takes it's one extra step sometimes, but we can do a little bit more to, secure our data, especially, in crypto. Gosh, I don't know if you heard about that story this week about Pegasus, this malware that,
yes,
that can basically record everything on your phone. I think it's everything. It's Android, it's iOS, it's PCs too. So
was this the Israeli company?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they created this software, and I guess
software for sale.
Yeah, right. It was for sale, so that governments could use it, or I guess certain individuals or organizations could use it to spy on certain heads of state. I know Macron was one of the people that they were trying to keep tabs on. And this goes down to, once again, the keystroke level. So whatever you're typing into your phone is being recorded. You almost have to assume that at any given point in time, your phone is either listening or watching what you're doing, right? I know even
interesting.
If... Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's going to be interesting based on kind of what you said, is that, we kind of had this kind of technological kind of upkeep with the smartphones. I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of go back down to the flip phones again, because people want the privacy and the safety.
Yeah, no, I think, I've considered that many times, just because I'm like, dang, yeah, just because I've encountered certain situations where I don't feel comfortable, you have a conversation with somebody and then you see an ad 5 minutes later about what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily feel comfortable about that. Furthermore, I don't know about you, but I get better reception on a flip phone or a downsized phone or a phone other than a smartphone nowadays anyway. So I'm like, I've considered it for quite some time now. And you're right. I mean, the way things are moving, that's probably a better idea. And I mean, then there's the whole notifications thing, right? I mean, how notifications affect your brain from a logical thinking standpoint, from an attention standpoint. I mean, if you're not turning off your notifications every now and then or completely unplugging from your phone, I mean, there are study, or well, I'm not going to go that far, but there is mounting evidence that it is affecting our brains and the way that we think, so, but I don't know. I think I'm getting a little bit too far off track and off topic here.
Hey, it's fun to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, hey, this is a very interesting world that we're living in. So, but what I do kind of want to maybe talk about a little bit more, we discussed this previously about collateralization in, not so much liquidation, but collateralization. If you could talk about that concept in DeFi generally, and maybe also how it pertains to the Black DAO, that'd be great.
Well, so the collateralization part. So as far as like the way that the DAO would work, in the way that we see it, is that there wouldn't, as far as like the beginning phase of kind of the funding mechanism, there won't be a collateralization aspect for the individual, or I mean, unless I'm missing something, we don't see a collateralization aspect. It would be more okay. So with the governance token, right, you would vote the idea to see if it can move forward to become an endowment. So if the voting, let's say, for example, and I should have mentioned this before, is that voting is weighted based on how many Fredericks you use. So let's say, for example, if me, Mark, and John each put up 10 Fredericks each, that's 30 Fredericks total. But if you put up 50 Fredericks, your vote is weighted more than our 3 votes because we only put up 30 combined and you put up 50. So it's all weighted based on how many you put forth. But once it gets to the next phase, which is the endowment phase, is that all of these funds are all stable coins. And so once the actual endowment reaches its full function, or that it's fully funded, it then triggers to the next phase, which is the actual part where we actually assign the project manager, who is going to then assign everyone to kind of fill in all the different project portions in order to complete that project. And then, like I said before, if it doesn't get funded, then the funding then goes back to the individual. So it's not really as far as like right now where we are in this phase, we don't have it in the roadmap for any type of like vaults or like any type of collateralization or anything like that right now. I mean, that's something that I was thinking about long term, where, hey, how can we get more people on board with kind of understanding those aspects? But in the beginning, we just really wanted to focus on how can we possibly get Black people on board with the idea of, hey, we can crowdsource this, we can show them how the information is as present, is transparent, how they can see this information, and then how they can register that information. Because that's another thing that I think that we all kind of need to understand too, is that, I mean, obviously you already know this, but there's the aspect of even understanding how to read information on a blockchain, right? How do you know what's been processed? How do you know how much ether was spent? How do you know what gas is, right? All these different things that I'm still trying to think about, how do I explain this to someone, right? And that's kind of where I am right now. We're trying to figure out how do we kind of get people on board. Because if I just talk about, hey, we want to create the Black DAO and we want to create endowments and we're going to fund these things, that's all great. But what's a exchange, right? So I need to first start off where, how do I get people to go on board first? How do I get people to even know what Uniswap is? How do I because Uniswap is going to be the way that we actually transfer tokens into the Black DAO. We're going to use probably some type of like plugin on the website in order to just like transfer the funds to the site. That's also how we plan on using allowing people to purchase Fredericks. So the educational component is really what I really want to focus on in the next like maybe year or so, and just trying to see how feasible and the appetite for people. So if it's any consolation, there are people who are taking the online courses. There's people who in the community, over 90% of the people are African American who are taking the courses, which is great. And we're really doing the marketing and outreach to African Americans, YouTube channels. So people who tend to have audiences that are majority African American, just to make sure that we're kind of reaching the community that we're trying to serve, and to make sure that they kind of feel like the projects that we're trying to look for, they're going to be the ones who are going to want to fund those things.
Awesome. So you just talked about your courses. I think you mentioned them a little bit earlier. Where can people find your courses, and what are the courses that are available?
Sure. So there's two courses. One, so the courses are housed on Teachable. The actual URL is kind of long, but I can see if I can pull it up real quick. It's let me see here. But anyway, the courses are there's a beginner course, and then there is an advanced course. So the beginner course talks about all things related to kind of like getting started. So, how to open up your first account, what is Coinbase, the different terms that we're going to use. We have a term glossary that we're going to use. We explain what Bitcoin and Ethereum are, altcoins are, understanding centralized versus decentralized, using a hardware wallet, using a desktop wallet. So I mainly use 3 wallets. So everything that I tell people to use is kind of like I tell them my whole process that I've kind of used along the way. So for me personally, I got started with Coinbase. I don't necessarily want to say Coinbase is the best to use, but for me, it was the easiest way to onboard. They made it so simple and so easy. It's not the cheapest, but for the ease of use, I don't know how you felt about it, but for ease of use for me, it was extremely easy. For desktop wallet, I personally use Exodus, and so that's what I kind of tell people to use in the course. And for me, Exodus, why do I use it? I use it because I love the graphic interface, and I think it looks beautiful, and I think it's really easy to navigate. That's just me personally. And then for me, the hardware wallet that I recommend, I use Trezor and Ledger. Those are the 2 wallets that I use. And so that's kind of the 2 wallets that I kind of tell people to use in the course. And I want to make clear that I don't think that any of these things are the kind of golden rule, or you have to do these things. But I personally use them, and I had success using them. So that's kind of the route that I wanted to take with people. And then in the advanced course, I talk a little bit more about things like, what is proof of work? What is proof of stake? How to read candles? What are decentralized applications? How to navigate a MetaMask wallet? How to use the Binance Smart Chain on the MetaMask wallet? How to use your hardware wallet with MetaMask? And then even go through things like, and this is, not financial advice or anything, but I think it's extremely important just to understand these different components. It's just like understanding how to yield farm and what is yield farming. I'm not saying that you should do those things, but I think it will be, I think it's important for everybody to kind of experiment with everything, not saying that you should go out and put money in and, ape into anything, but at the same time, it's extremely important for you to just learn these processes, because this is financial. To me personally, this is financial literacy, right? So whether it's yield farming, whether it's staking, yes, there's a lot of crap projects out there. There's a lot of scammy projects out there, but some of these fundamental things are extremely valuable, and I think that they're extremely important for people to know. So to that point, the website is blackfilmguild.teachable.com. And then if you go there, there's courses there on cryptocurrency. And so you can just select the cryptocurrency 101 course, and then there's the decentralized finance advanced course. So those are the 2 courses that I have there for crypto. And then also, because my background is kind of in like film and communications, there's a couple of courses there on filmmaking and kind of like that kind of stuff. So
awesome. But I think it's important too to kind of show that not everybody is 100% crypto. You know what I'm saying? Or full-time crypto. Like, if you want to be part of this, one, you have to adopt it, right? Or have some agreement to adopt it. And then you have to transition. And trust me, sometimes it's not the easiest transition. And other people are operating with different resources, right? So there are people who can, take, tens of thousands of dollars and just start day trading, right?
Mhm.
And do well overnight. Some people only got $20, and that's where you start, and that's where you move ahead, and that's where you move forward. You can definitely do something with that $20. I mean,
Oh, I
you
have a
know,
story. People want to hear it. So,
sure,
so first of all, I actually am getting my wife involved with crypto. So what I pretty much
awesome,
did is I kind of showed her just, hey, I want you to just go on to Coinbase and I want you to um, buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. That's all I want you to do. So I sat there next to her. I showed her how to do it, and she did it. I think the biggest thing for a lot of people is just connecting your bank account, and giving up all that information. That's really the biggest barrier, all that KYC. A lot of people know how to register for a website and go through the process where you get the email from your to your email, or you get the confirmation email to your email address and then verify that kind of stuff. But the KYC stuff is a little bit of a barrier because a lot of people don't do that, and a lot of people get worried about that, especially when you're entering social security number, that kind of stuff. And I understand that. But anyway, I showed her how to do that, and she did it for her first time, and it was really successful. She really liked it. I told her you can do it, try it again next month, just to kind of get her like feet wet. So my other friends, they tend to be extremely risk averse. So what I told them is that, okay, look, let's do this then. What I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and get on the Coinbase. And again, I'm not. I want to make sure that everybody knows I'm not like a sponsored by Coinbase. I have no affiliation with Coinbase. I just started off with Coinbase and I found it extremely easy. That's why I'm using it as an example. So I told my friends who are extremely risk averse, I said, okay, look, I want you to go ahead and sign up for a Coinbase account. Go ahead and do all the KYC. And what I want you to do is I want you to buy $100 worth of USDC. Now, why would I say that? Well, I told them to do that because it's pretty much the equivalent of $100. So if you don't want to do it anymore, just put the money right back into your account. It's really not that big of a deal, right? But what it does is it gets them exposure to seeing how the cryptocurrency works. And then maybe if they want to, they can then trade it to something else. But ultimately, what I want to do is get people's feet wet. And if it's any consolation with my whole strategy with crypto, and this is not financial advice, this is just me telling you what I do personally, what I did in 2017, is that after the market collapsed, and I wasn't, thank goodness, like I was invested in crypto, like I was loving it, thousands of dollars in, I was having a good time like everybody else in 2017. And when it collapsed, I thought it was the best thing ever because I learned so much and I was just so fascinated by how everything was working and the promise of all the projects and everything else. But after it collapsed, what I did is I just dollar cost averaged for 3 years about $100 every 2 weeks, and it was on auto pay. By the time that 3 years was up, I had a whole Bitcoin. Think about that. So I did $100 every 2 weeks, and I had a Bitcoin afterwards. Like that seems amazing to me. And that's what I want. I want people to not be discouraged because Bitcoin's, 33,000 or something like that right now, is that don't be discouraged because if you dollar cost average, I think that for me, at least me dollar cost averaging kind of showed me that this is kind of the best way for me personally, because I'm not good at timing markets. I don't know how to read candles and learn about the different the different curves and the angles and all these different charts that people are showing up. I don't get into all those things because I know that that's not where I stand. I'm not a day trader. I think it's extremely risky, and I personally don't do that. So what I do, I dollar cost average. And if you look at the history of cryptocurrencies, just like the historical context from 2013 on, it's on an upward pattern. So for me, that's all I need to see, and that's kind of my strategy and trajectory going forward. So ultimately, I want to just encourage people to just get their feet wet, and for us, for our community especially, if you think about the previous kind of boom cycles in the past where people made a ton of money, people were able to buy homes and gain a ton of money into different investments, whether it be real estate or different stocks or gold or all these different things. A lot of our families from the past weren't able to participate in those types of things. There's a book called Color of Law, right? I forget who wrote it, but it came out. So there's a town in Oakland. I want to say it might not be Union City. It's somewhere in Oakland. I mean, that's somewhere in the Bay Area. And so this town actually, the federal government gave funds for them to develop the community, but it was on the grounds that they don't allow African Americans to buy homes in that community. So if you think about
San
that,
Leandro.
yeah, it was somewhere like that. I can't remember where it was. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was somewhere in the Bay Area. And so what that tells you is that we had literally the same country that we fought and died for, the same country that we pay taxes for, create a federally funded project that did not allow us to participate in. And then people wonder why we're so far behind. And so for me, I don't want us to be left behind with this second wave. That's really what I'm trying to do. So even if there is an opportunity here where, you don't have to necessarily make money, but you can educate yourself on this next wave. And that's what's really important is this education. Like, Kamal, you and we're kind of already on that boat. We kind of have a good foundation for what's going on. And we also want to continue to learn. So it's not about me and you. We kind of are already kind of in this space a little bit. But what about the people who have no idea? They hear Bitcoin and stuff thrown around, but they never got their feet wet. And that's where kind of you and I can come in, where we can kind of help bring people in. And that's kind of where my focus is kind of going to be in the future, I think.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like that critical race theory stuff.
And I hear that word thrown around a lot, but I have no idea what it means. It's just like kind of words I see on Twitter and stuff, but I'm like, I haven't done any research on what that is.
Well, I don't know either. Since it's so debatable, I just throw it out there every now and then to see if what does it really mean. But I mean, I think, hey, there is so much work to be done, and once again, I applaud you for putting the effort forward. And I also want people to get to the point to where you are, right, where price doesn't matter, right, and you're in the ecosystem and you're accumulating, and you're also you're improving your economic situation as well. But it's like, hey, if Bitcoin goes down 20%, it doesn't really mean that much to you, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You're in the game, you're in the boat, you're sailing, and all you're doing is you're drifting, and you're cool either way, right? Because once again, you're only putting in what you can afford to lose. So, this is definitely it's time once again for us to kind of do the work on the other end, right? Make sure we're exposing people, make sure we're educating people, we're giving them good advice along the way too, which I think is important. So that being said, I also want to kind of move to wrap things up. So, Walter, if you could tell people where they can find out more about you, your course again, if you could repeat where people can find your course and where they can find more information about the Black DAO, that'd be great.
Sure. So I have a YouTube channel. It's called the Black DAO. I don't since it's so new, it doesn't really have a what is it called? The customized YouTube kind of link. But if you just type in the Black DAO on YouTube, you can find it there. We talk about a little bit about DeFi, a little bit about crypto in general, and then a little bit about the news and Bitcoin. So it's kind of a whole host of just crypto stuff. And then ultimately, what I want to lead to is develop the DAO from this channel and offer more education. So we do have education on there, just like short little videos about Bitcoin or Ethereum on there. We also have the two courses, which is the beginner and the intermediate course. The beginner course, of course, is just on getting started. And then the intermediate is more on things such as decentralized finance. And so that can be found at blackfilmguild.teachable.com. So those are and then also you can email me. I have a number of email addresses. But one of the best ways to email me is probably blackdowcrypto@gmail.com. That's probably the best email to reach me at. But yeah, I'm also on Twitter, blackdowcrypto. That's also a great way to reach out to me. So I'm always on the internet trying to find out more information and just talk to people who are interested. So yeah, just find me on there.
All right. Well, hey, Walter, thanks for taking time out of your Friday evening, which is essentially your weekend, to be on my show and talk about your project. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being a good sport.
Hey, I gotta say, Dan, great job here. I love what you're doing, and much success to you in the future. I look forward to telling everybody about the show. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, hey, and I'm definitely going to tell more people about you, and I still can't wait for the opportunity to have the chance to work with you a little bit more on some of these projects. So we'll be in touch, and keep up the good work.
Absolutely, you too. Take care.
All right, Walter, have a great weekend.
All right, you too.
Everybody at home, check out what Walter's got going on, and check out some of the stuff we were talking about in the first hour as well. In the meantime, keep an eye on what's going on here at Black USA News. We got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of great shows, a lot of great people, a lot of great personalities, a lot of great perspectives. In the meantime, guys, be safe, play at your own risk, take care out there.